And all 8 utility companies have presented their proposals to the PURC. And at the moment, we've all seen what ECG is requesting for Gridco, VRA, Ghana Gas, Ghana Water Company Limited, and others have all put in their request. But we understand that in terms of the request for tariff adjustment, there was the Ghana Water Company that put in the highest bid. This afternoon, Beyond the Numbers, we are here to break this down for you to understand. When we are talking about tariff, what do we even mean? Are we talking about the end user tariff, or it is just a tariff that goes to the power companies, or I mean in terms of the utilities companies, and how much are you expected to pay? And looking at even the explanations that they've all given, do they even have a case in terms of what they've proposed? And what are we likely, or are they likely to get from the PURC? Winston Taki is on my left. He's coming to help us with the analysis. Caleb Ziblim is on my right. And as always, the 2 big men are here. And I'll start with Caleb. You understand the tariff adjustment very well in terms of the difference between the overall tariff and the tariff that goes to the various utility companies. Help us understand. You have this diagram on the smart wall. Let's help our viewers understand what we are talking about. It is the end user tariff, and if it's not, what are we even looking at?
Okay, so when we are talking about the water company, this is end user tariff. When it's about electricity, it's not the end user tariff. So with the Ghana Water Company, they are requesting about 280% increment in tariffs. And that's going to affect the consumer because that's the end user tariff. But for the electricity, it's made up of 3 components. You have your generation tariff, that comes mainly from VRA. The IPPs are also in there. Then we have transmission tariff, that's from Gridco. So Gridco takes the power from VRA and then transmits it to ECG. Then ECG distributes us, and ECG will distribute the power to the customers. So these 3 players here, each of them have their own tariffs. ECG has their own tariff for distribution, transmission has Gridco, and then generation has VRA and the IPPs. So all of them have their individual tariffs, and together you get the overall electricity tariff. So if ECG down here says they want 200% increment in their tariff, it's not 200% increment in the overall tariff. It's 200% increment over here. Then for Gridco and VRA, here and here. So if you do the math, and with all the players on board, and if PURC agrees to all their demands, this total overall tariff should go up by about 100%. So it's not 200%, about 100%. And then we'll come into whether PURC can actually accept, or whether precedent and all of that. But then the understanding is that for electricity, these are the components of the overall tariff. So if one moves up by 200%, it's not that the entire tariff is going to go up by 200%, but it will still go up eventually.
So technically, that's what Caleb has explained to us. But Winston, you know very well what the Ghana Water Company has been demanding. What are we learning? How many percent are they demanding? And what at all do we have in terms of precedent? And where are they at the moment, and where do they want to get to in terms of the proposal they've sent to the PURC?
It's interesting, the presentation made by the Ghana Water Company put it out to both the public regulator that indeed they are at a point that they need some investment. And if you look up the numbers that they propose 20.08 Ghana cedis in terms of increment from the current 5 cedis, 28 pesos in terms of, so that basically gives it about 280 Ghana cedis increment. So if you're watching me here, this is a proposal placed by the Ghana Water Company. If you look at the analysis that were defended by them, they said that indeed challenges has been the metering system. They also suggested that one of the key components that has affected the operation is activities of illegal miners, illegal mining happening close to the water bodies. And if you look at the treatment of some of the plants that they use to distribute waters, they've had to invest more in a lot of chemicals to process and treat those water for public consumption. And they are proposing that should this be considered, it will enhance the operation and ensure efficiency. But one key question you and I will be asking is why this increment? And at the end of the day, how much have they made in terms of profit if it comes to basically receiving and paying your water bill? Consumers will say they have paid, but how come the consistent increment does it reflect the reality on the grounds? Already we've seen the adjustment in water bills, which has happened the last tariff adjustment period by basically 4%, and we saw other adjustment that is coming by. So this proposal basically is in line with their strategic plan for 2025 to 2029?
Well, so this is a story of the Ghana Water Company. Yesterday, fortunately, I was at the meeting and I heard all the utilities companies make their proposals and reasons why they should be accepted. If you look at the 280% being asked by the Ghana Water Company, just like Caleb said, this is an end user tariff. It means that whatever that will be approved here, the consumer will pay directly, and that will be the general tariff that the consumer will pay on water. And they made, a strong case that if you look at their operational cost, it has gone up significantly. They currently have a big debt that they are expected to pay. And they made another revelation that if you look at their debt position at the moment, they are handicapped because they got a letter from the Finance Ministry directing them to pay their own debt. If Finance Ministry is asking them to pay their own debt, how do they pay for that debt? They need to factor that in the tariff calculation. And then as well, they spoke about galamsey as well. And they mentioned the fact that if you look at their operational cost, the cost of chemicals to treat the water that comes to our homes has actually increased astronomically, where in 2022, for instance, they were spending close to about 97 million Ghana cedis to buy chemicals to treat the water that gets to our homes. But fast forward to 2025, they had to more than double this, increases from 97 million Ghana cedis now to 337 million Ghana cedis. If you do the math, that's about 200% increment in just the cost of chemicals.
Yeah.
And then they made another interesting point, and we are here to tell you the stories behind these numbers. And according to them, if you look at their price build-up or the tariff build-up, for instance, there was nowhere, let's say a decade ago or 5 years ago, it was so impossible to see chemicals or the components of chemicals even featuring in the top 3. But now, it used to be somewhere around top 4, it used to be number 4. But now, because of the issues around illegal mining, of all seeing what has happened in Kwenyakon, where the water plant has to be shut down because it is no longer safe to treat that water and it has become so dangerous and all of that. They say that if you look at that aspect, they now have to spend more on it. And the fact that even if you look at their debt position at the moment and the fact that it wasn't even part of the top 3, now it's competing with electricity in terms of becoming number 1. So if you look at their build-up, light or the power that they use to, treat the water is number 1, now followed by chemicals, which used to be number 3. Is this a good case for them to make that 280% request for the increment in tariff, Caleb?
I think so, like Riley said, because now illegal mining has polluted the water body severely, and then even water plants are closing down now because of the impacts of illegal mining in these areas. And like the Ghana Water Riley said, if you don't give them 280%, you have to shut down the company. Yeah. But there's also precedent because the last time, the Ghana Water made a similar case to PRC, and PRC, they don't mind them. PRC gave them just a little, I think it was up to 10% increment, the last tariff adjustment. So even though they do have a case, PRC will have to balance that with public interest. And then if the government is also willing, because a rep from the Ghana Water yesterday said that if the government decides to forgo some of the loans Ghana Water owes the government, they can adjust their 280% they're asking for. If that doesn't happen, then we have to pay for it. If we don't pay an increased tariffs, the governments might, try and sneak it in the tax somewhere. Like the way we got 1% increments in the ESLA levy earlier this year to buy fuel for
one city increment, though.
1 city increment to buy fuel for the thermal plants. That is a way that prevented the government from adding that to the electricity tariffs. So if the government wants to reduce the burden and the incident, because not everyone might end up paying the tax that the government will put this on, that could be a way to escape this 180%. But then because of illegal mining, I think this is justified.
Well, the person to stop illegal mining, many have said, is government. That if you withdraw the LI, that allows the mining in forest reserves, and then also if you clamp down on illegal miners, we shouldn't be at where we are. At the moment, it looks like government doesn't want to pay the subsidies. And so Ghana Water Company is trying to also calculate this or factor this into the tariff. Should government pay, or this should be pushed to consumers? Consumers definitely would not want to pay 28% increment in end user tariff in water. They definitely will be expecting some level of subsidy from government, but it looks like government is also, handicap at the moment, Winston.
Ghana Water Company, if you go to their books, consistently they've been making losses. If you look at how it's been structured, you are to supply water and you have metering system to measure. Certainly they need efficient workforce to go down. First, you used to see a lot of them hovering around neighborhoods, monitoring your meters, ensuring that your bill is prompt, the collection is prompt. If you don't pay, you get cut off. That should be the way to go, because you can't be consuming or enjoying a service without corresponding payment. And that is what Ghana Water Company should be doing, and it's also ECG should be doing, because there are several state agencies that are owing ECG. They get to the companies or the institutions to collect them, they are told order from above. But if you want to have efficient collection system, unlike previously where they said they are going digital, yes, they've gone digital, but how is the efficiency level being done? Because if you are having an institution, if you look at their books, consistent government intervention has sustained ECG. At the end of the month, the government has to intervene for salary increments. You go behind the scenes, most of the equipment that are used for metering, some of them which are digital, are being given to private entities. And there are illegal structures or connections that are happening for some companies that are using water for huge time production without paying corresponding cost or usage. So I believe the proposal for increment does not align, because you have a product, you have to service. However, the interventions that they are calling for from government agency, for instance, in dealing with galamsey, needs to be strong. Just recently, we saw the withdrawal of the military with the impression that government is going back to re-strategize. But we've not seen for the last 3 weeks any galamsey activities being stopped in some key issues. Just this weekend, we saw Erastus giving a hint that some of the galamsey tractors have returned back to certain places. And today, you release a data that told the number of excavators that have come into Africa using Ghana as a gateway, telling you how thrived the activity of mining has become across regions. Even politicians who pretend to be fighting those operations are the ones certainly pushing the galamsey operation. This is affecting you and I if we don't stand up now.
Well, the cost has been reviewed. How much we even used to import excavators now is around $205 million Ghana in 2023 alone. If you do the math for the last 10 decades, that's between 2013 and 2023, we've spent close to about $969 million in the importation of excavators. The Minister for Transport says that, look, if you look at our ports, we receive close to about 200 excavators every day. 200 excavators every day. The question is, what are we using it for? Look at the landmass of Nigeria.
If we had corresponding roads being constructed,
exactly,
with the amount of excavators, Ghana wouldn't be where we are.
In fact, if you look at Nigeria, is way, way bigger than Ghana, but they spent about $94 million to import excavators in 2023, and we are only second to South Africa, and the two of us are mining countries in the two biggest mining countries in West Africa. My question is, who pays for the cost of galamsey? Should it be the consumer or it should be government?
It's a very difficult question.
Well, it's a very deep question, but ultimately it lies on the government to control galamsey. Then the government fails to control galamsey, force our citizens, because we'll get affected either way. And we put the government there. Yeah. So if the government is not controlling galamsey in a way that they should, and at the end of the day, force on citizens to pay for that, then the government has failed us. It's as simple as that. And then there's no way we can escape this. It's either two things. Either the government finds a way to control it and protect citizens, or we end up paying the cost for it. And also because right now we are locked out of the external market. The IMF is on our necks, which is why the government does not want to be handing out subsidies anymore. That's why the government introduced the ESLA levy. They increased the ESLA levy by one city, because they cannot keep pumping money into ECG and Ghana Water when we're under an IMF program and you have to control our expenditure. But we'll be leaving the IMF program soon, and usually that comes with more laxity, and then the government can decide to do what they want. But then that's what happens. It's a cycle. We leave the IMF program, the government starts paying more subsidies,
in the next 3-4 years,
we go back again. So that's a problem. That's why this has to be sustainable. And when Winston said Ghana Water has to go out there and then collect their bills and all of that, the problem is the current tariff is not cost reflective. Yeah. So even though Ghana Water is getting is collecting tariffs now.
It's not enough.
They cannot use it to go about their normal day operation because it doesn't even cover the cost of producing water, more or less going out to enforce action, which is why Ghana Water says increase our tariff, and both ECG as well. Increase the tariff. We can cover the cost of the power that is being supplied to you, or the cost of water, then the rest will be for our operational costs. That's why we can go out, ensure that people are paying their bills, it's connecting people. But as it stands now, the tariff we are paying them cannot do that.
Well, our job is always to tell the stories behind the numbers. So yesterday, when we went on break and we were waiting for other utilities companies to, come and present, I tried to pick the minds of some of the stakeholders who were there, right? And you could get the indication or the impression that if you look at all the companies or the utilities companies that did the presentation, they feel that it is Ghana Water Company that has a case because of galamsey, although Gridco also made the same case for galamsey and all of that. But they feel that if you look at who is more handicapped at the moment, it's like it's Ghana Water Company that is handicapped because, it's no fault of theirs that the water that they have to treat is not polluted. They need to buy more chemicals, and if they have to buy more chemicals, who pays for that chemicals? Do you also feel that, well, this 280% is justified on the tangent of illegal mine, the fact that this is not the doing of Ghana Water Company Limited?
Two things that every Ghanaian, every citizen is supposed to enjoy as a basic right: access to water, access to electricity, and also proper healthcare facility across the nation. And these two, when we come to a point where we are projecting and assessing the condition of our river bodies and most of our open water sources, it appears that they are being attacked. The climate change conversation has now become minimal. You go to certain regions, the temperature, humidity levels are very low. And
we keep talking about climate issues, right?
Yes, climate issue. And you realize that these issues we used to discuss 10 years ago, we are living them now, and the water poverty situations are quite prevalent. And if we don't deal with them now, Ghana Water Company will just be an entity with a lot of liabilities and assets sitting there ajar. And these facilities that were investment to the tunes of millions of dollars will be there, they'll rust, and they'll become burdenful in terms of trying to maintain them subsequently. And these assets in some key regions that need strategic investment, the workers, they don't get a service to work with. And these are huge burden that will come up. Because if you go across Ghana, sometimes Eastern region, try going to Cape Coast, and you see years of government assets being left to rot. So you ask yourself, Ghana had this factory, Ghana had these machines, and you are wondering that if we had a long-term development, Ghana Water shouldn't be here at this time. There are, if you go through their books and you read the historical plan that they have for this establishment, it will go way back.
Yeah.
And by now, water should be available 24/7, every part of country, reservoirs all over. And if you see...
Well, in Ghana, it looks like water is a luxury at the moment.
Strategic roadmap for the Ghana Water, but it appeared the politicization of the governance structure of Ghana Water Company has led to where it is. And we become a very key... We restricted the debt outlook. So every time the debt... I would rather put it like this. We've institutionalized the debt outlook. So it's normal for government agencies to sit on debt and pretend to be working.
Yeah.
And we can't accept it as business as usual.
Well, in fact, we'll move from Ghana Water Company Limited. And if you look at the indication we got from the chairman for the PRC Stakeholder Committee, she said that, well, if we don't solve the issue of galamsey, at a point, we might maybe start importing water, and Naya Janto made that point. But in fact, let's switch to ECG, because yesterday in that stakeholder meeting, you see that even when PRC mentioned that ECG was about to do their presentation, you can see the chairs and people say, hey. It means that ECG is very, very important. Caleb, what is ECG requesting for, and what's the story behind their request?
So ECG is now requesting for 61 pesos per kilowatt hour. They are currently receiving about 19 pesos per kilowatt hour. So the jump from 19 to 61, that's the 225.
And that's not end user, that's the distribution service charge, right?
Yeah. So that's the 225% increment we keep hearing about. From 19 pesos per kilowatt hour to 61 pesos per kilowatt hour. So that's part of the entire electricity tariff that we pay. It's not the electricity tariff we pay, it's part of it.
Yeah.
So ECG wants theirs increased from 19 to 61. But then the precedent is the last time they went for this, ECG said they wanted 33 pesos per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Imperial also gave them 19 pesos per kilowatt hour. No, so we've been here before. Every time the agencies or the utilities go, they request what they think is fair. The Imperial also comes back and say, well, weighing on public interest, public safety and all of that, this is what we can give you. And then we keep going from there.
So what are the reasons? Let's walk us through the reasons that ECG is giving in terms of why they think that they deserve 225% increments in their distribution service charge.
So if you go through the proposals of all the utilities from ECG, NETCO, VRE, and GridCo, they all cite these three main things. The first one, the CD depreciation. They say over the past few years, what they were collecting in dollar terms has depreciated, and they're even in red now. They're now making losses if you compare it to dollar terms because of the value of your currency. So because of that, increase our tariffs.
The exchange rate losses.
Exactly.
Losses,
yeah, because if you look at ECG's books, majority of their losses are attributed to exchange rate losses because you produce in cedis, but you pay. So you sell in cedis, but you pay back in dollars.
Yeah, you produce in dollars, you sell in cedis.
Exactly. You have to pay the IPP dollars every single month. And then when you collect your bill, they usually pay every 2 months. When you collect your bill in May, by the time you're in July, the cedi has lost value.
Yeah.
So you have to take more of your revenue and pay back, which is why they are suffering right now. So the first one is depreciation of the currency, where they say it's not their fault. So increase our tariffs to reflect that. They also say the current tariff is not cost reflective. And that's running through all of them. They say that what they are collecting right now is barely enough to even break even, not about make profits. And all of them are not even talking about profits. All of them say, if you give us this increment we are looking for, we'll break even. We'll not make a profit.
How do we turn this around, Winston? We're talking about even breaking even. ECG, even as of 2023, we're making a loss of 10.2 billion Ghana cedis. How do you even break even with tariffs?
It's impossible because from the onset, the problem began the moment they go into the market because you are buying power in dollars and you are selling it in cedis. That is the basic line of the financial challenges. So it is always going to come backwards. The dollar CD dance has not been quite romantic. It's been a very toxic relationship over the years, and they can't sustain their hopes on the performance of the CD going forward. The key issue is all of the tariff does not solve the challenge of inefficiency within the ECG challenge. So they've not proposed how they are going to deal with the inefficiencies, apart from the initial cost where they invest about 480,000 million Ghana cedis to be on the platform, the Power app, which they pay annually. And they said that component for the payment should be factored in their tariff. They're also proposing for a monthly tariff adjustment instead of quarterly adjustment. Yeah. That means every month, it's likely our prices could go up. And
come down. It's an adjustment.
So it's interesting. So all these proposals, we need to know what is the strategy to ensure efficient supply of energy, because that is the key conversation.
In fact, beyond the 225% request, ECG is also saying that, well, if you look at our street lights, the street light levy that we call it, they say that, well, the entire 100% of the revenue doesn't come to us. We only get 50%. Our mother ministry, which is the energy ministry, gets about 50%. So we want that to be also factored in. We asked them about the 1%, the 1 cedi additional levy on fuel, which is supposed to cater for the liquid fuels we buy to power the thermal plants. And according to them, well, if you look at the nature of the levy, it is not a revenue that comes to ECG directly. It goes to government. And government will then have to possibly give it to them as a subsidy. So they say that, not directly, but you get the impression that this is not something we can rely on in terms of when it will be released and all of that. We have to take care of our own books, and we need something that can bring us some form of revenue. And that was the point of ECG. They also said that, well, you PRC, you are a regulator, but don't go and sit down and create your own, exchange rate, dollar to CD rate, and come and tell us that we should all use it. Let us go according to the daily interbank, Bank of Ghana.
That proposal was very interesting.
That is what they are requesting for, especially if you look at what they projected. Yesterday, I asked them why ECG went so bold to say that if you look at the major tariff adjustment order, they say they expect the dollar to CD to be between, I think, 10 cedis and 28 pesos or so. Inflation single days around 8%.
So who pays for the forex differentials?
In fact, and that's always been their biggest headache. Maybe that's the reason why they're saying that, well, PRC, let us all go to the Bank of Ghana and use that data instead of you setting up the data to actually give it to us. But one thing that yesterday came up was how ECG was going to turn around. Yeah. In fact, who pays for these inefficiencies? They've been looking at international benchmark and saying that, well, this distribution service charge, which is what comes to ECG as revenue, globally, people are charging 30 to 33% of what is collected as
for which level of service delivery?
Exactly. And now, Winston Amwa asked a very important question that you are saying international standards. But if you look at your losses, in terms of the technical losses and system loss, you are doing around 32%, right? International standard is around 21%. You are not there yet, but you're talking about international standards. Is this a fair case to possibly deny ECG of the 2.25% increment that they are getting? That maybe you work on yourself first before you come to the consumer? Certainly,
certainly. Before I even continue, because of time, Enclave Power, which also made a representation yesterday, I was going through their proposal, and one thing that came to it, they said, if Enclave Power has no bad or doubtful debts currently in their books.
That's a big sheet.
That's a big sheet. They went ahead to say, although their performance is kind of open, they are excluded from subsidies, and therefore their argument was that although these ECG and other utility are already asking for more, considered as intensive distribution, they take power from VRA. VRA somehow also has its challenges. So I'm wondering, what is Enclave Power doing apart from having the clientele, which are quite limited?
Special clients. In a free zone area.
Exactly. Apart from that, what can be learned in terms of, because they are a private entity, and they are also meeting certain level of clientele. However, there is still the tendency to run efficiently ECG to where it's supposed to be, unlike the 10.2 billion Ghana cedis from 2023, which has increased by more in 2025 third quarter.
Well, Caleb, this is in terms of what we know about major tariff adjustments. Your final comments. We have just about 1 minute to go. Yeah.
Well, I think even if you are zooming out a bit, this is a major tariff adjustment. And the government said they are going to include fuel costs to the tariff, capex and some other charges into the tariff. What the utilities are proposing now does not include those things.
No, not at all.
So this is just for them. So when the government also, because the government will also have to include these things. So when the government includes the cost of fuel, capacity charges and reserve capacity, capex, capital expenditure, all of that into the tariffs, I mean,
that's another interesting angle that we'll be looking at when
I know definitely PRC is not going to agree to it.
Absolutely. But if you're asking us the question of when this will take effect, the IMF expect that PRC should finish all this stakeholder negotiation by the end of this month. And by 1st October, according to the structural benchmark that we have to meet under the IMF program, this, not the proposal, but what will be approved, should actually take effect on the 1st of October. This has been Beyond the Numbers with me, Akufo-Addo, and
Winston Taki.
And the man.
Caleb Ziblen.
See you same time, 5:30 p.m. on Friday.
Yeah, thank you all.